Welcome to Our Creatures Podcast. This is Chris.
And I'm Angie.
And so 2026 is the year of the horse, which begins, 17th of February of this year. So this is the first real domestic species Angie and I have done a full episode on. We've done wolves, precursors to our dogs. We just did the African wildcat, the precursor to our domestic cat. We've done Przewalski's horses, we've done some wild asses, but for this year, we're going to do the horse today. I want to start this out because this is going to be a big part of the beginning of the podcast I'm going to talk about. I will argue with anybody on the planet that no animal has made such an impact on human history than the horse. Really, the horse is humanity's best friend. And I'm going to chat about that in a few minutes. Why? I love my dogs. They sleep with us. They cohabitate with us. We've been with them a lot longer than horses. But once we domesticated the horse, everything changed for humanity.
Absolutely. No, you make a very good argument. And I'm just so excited to be here today talking about one of my most favorite animals. I mean, for goodness sakes, if it wasn't for the horse, you and I would have never met, Chris. Think about that. This is a perfect fit for me because I am also the year of the horse in the Chinese zodiac symbols. And so freedom, energy, speed, strength, independence, progress, vitality, and perseverance. So I don't know. What do you think? Am I energetic?
Sounds like you.
Warm-hearted,
Sounds
ambitious?
Like you. Absolutely. Yes.
Fond of movement and adventure, of course. Yes. So,
yes.
And like I said, it's just, I have been loving horses since I've been born and been riding them for close to 40 years now. I don't even like to say that. And so it's a lot. That's a lot of numbers. I am a Zennial, but yes. And I have to, this podcast really goes out to all of the horses that I've loved in my life, that I've worked with. I started here. I'm probably like 10 years old. For those watching on YouTube, this is me and Starbert. He was in Appaloosa. He was a great guy. He babysat me and was very safe. And then my heart horse, Miss Scotch Time Rose, a.k.a. Rosie, lived to be 36 years old. I went across the state of Michigan with her. She's my heart horse. And then her son, I still have Romeo, who I get to take care of and see every day. And actually, Miss Anna, one of my besties, painted this picture for me of him. And horses are just a huge part of my life. They're what Chris and I studied very intensely, their behavior, physiology. So yes, we will, by the end of this podcast, we'll definitely have you convinced that horses are our partners in war. That'll be Chris's part. Work, wonder. I mean, they capture our hearts. They're just their raw power. I'm going to talk about their intelligence. I'm going to share some studies today about how they're therapeutic in helping people. And it's just so many people connect through horses, whether it's through work or play, hobby, or just to live their lives, depending on what country you're from. And yeah, they're a fun species. We still need to do the zebra. So that'll probably happen sometime. Well, there's 3 species of zebras. We'll probably pick one of them this year. But at any rate, horses, you got to love them. We're going to blow your mind with some of their physiology today and share a passion about them with you all. And hopefully you'll agree.
Well, and the horse, 150 years ago, that was so important to your family. Owning a horse or horses to get around.
Speak for yourself. It still is right now.
Well, it is. It still is. But I'm saying, back in the day in Western civilization, horses are still used throughout the world for day-to-day getting to work, movement in certain areas. Mm-hmm. Yeah, transportation. But the horse was your car. You owned a horse or horses. That's how you went to town to get food and all of that.
That's how my dad swore. He still swears he wrote. That's how we got to school.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, my great-granddad, who was born in 1899 in Georgia in the United States. He met my little grandma when he rode his horse 20 miles to Sylvester, Georgia to pick something up. And he saw this young woman in a garden. They got talking, they got married, and here I am today.
Yeah.
So,
I hope that we
yeah.
go back to those ways. They seem simpler, you know?
But horses, just to get people thinking, it is a technology. I mean, we're talking about the animals today, but their impacts on humanity, I would rank them up there with the discovery of fire. That's probably one of our most important discoveries. Probably computers as we evolve in the next few hundred years. That one's really great to us. But horses are right up there. And I argue today, and think about this, we would not have gone to the moon if it wasn't for horses. And I'm going to explain to you why today. I wouldn't be talking to Angie from New Zealand over a computer if it wasn't for horses to advanced humanity. So much to talk about, these incredible creatures. And just to kick it off, Angie, I guess, just real quick before we get to description, we talked about Przewalski's horses, or what some people call Przewalski horses.
I call them P
That
horses,
is
but yes.
Yeah, P horses. That's the last true wild horse.
Yes.
All of our domestic horses today did not come from Przewalski horses. They came from an older lineage of Equus, or what were wild horses. They were all domesticated. All the wild Equus went extinct. And some people think 100 and something years ago. Others think it was much earlier than that. The wild horses we have today around the United States, Australia, New Zealand, Europe, Asia, those are escaped or released domestic horses. Okay, they're feral. So that's why we don't have like a wolf that we could talk about for the horse. And that's why they deserve their own episode. So, Angie,
there's many reasons why they deserve their own episode.
Yes, I know. They're crazy. They're awesome.
Yeah, I think everybody knows what a horse looks like, but it is amazing the amount of colors, color patterns, combinations, that they come in sizes. I'll let Chris talk about sizes. So it's similar to our domestic dog, which once again is all one species. So whether it's a miniature horse or a draft horse or a feral Mustang here in the United States or a Brumby in Australia, all the same species, just different breeds and sizes and colors and all of that. Depending on what source you use, there's over 300 to 500 recognized breeds worldwide. It varies by registry, and they're classed into different groups, whether they're hot-blooded like thoroughbreds or cold-blooded and large like Clydesdales, or warm-blooded somewhere in between, or pony and some of our smaller breeds. But yeah, so there's something for everybody, just like with domestic dogs, as far as, I think, breed, size, color, temperament, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, they were bred for different purposes.
Correct.
So that's why you have various sizes and different, sizes for going into the mines. So little miniature or ponies were pulling mine carts underground, to the large draft horses that were used to help plow fields. You had horses that were bred specifically just for riding. It was like, we call them like the Porsches or the Lamborghinis. Those fancy looking horses that their legs are flying up in the air. It's supposedly when you ride them, it's just like you don't even move because the horse is doing all this movement under you. And so they're like the most comfortable. So they are like very expensive. They are the Lamborghinis of the horse world, to our thoroughbreds who race around tracks and quarter horses. So yeah, all shapes and sizes. The smallest horse in the world was a miniature horse, and she stood almost 100 centimeters, just under that, at 97 centimeters, roughly 32 inches at the shoulder. So less than 3 feet tall.
Tiny.
Then you go to the largest. It was a Shire horse, a draft horse, that was 76 inches at the shoulder and weighed 2,500 to almost 3,000 pounds.
That's
so
crazy.
Almost
yeah.
like the top of my head, because I'm 6'5", so was his shoulder. His head would have been way up. So the average horse is roughly 64 inches, so a little bit over 5 feet at the shoulder, and they weigh around 1,100 pounds. Now, range everywhere. Horses are everywhere in the world. They've been on every continent, even Antarctica. They brought them. They didn't do so well, so they got these ponies, these hardy ponies from, I think, Scandinavia. They did go with some explorers in Antarctica, but there's no horses there today. But other than that, they're everywhere. I've been around the South Pacific. They're on the islands. In the Caribbean, they're on all the islands there. Yeah, they're everywhere. Horses are pretty much everywhere all over the world. Now, feral horses, very similar. Australia's got the Brumby. Very large population there. Very large population in North America, in Europe, and parts of Asia. I'm sure there's some wild horses in Africa too, just maybe some feral ones that got loose.
I was reading about the Namib desert horses in Namibia. Not that many, like probably less than 150, but yes, across Europe, there's the Dartmoor or New Forest ponies, the Conic horses in Poland, the Danube Delta horses, Oriera in Portugal. Those are actually critically endangered as a feral population with less than 200.
Yeah.
So yeah, and even in my backyard here in Gainesville, we have the Florida Cracker horses, which are a population of about 30 feral horses that are in a state park, and they are descendants from a Spanish colonial breed that learned how to live in Florida. And they do great with our heat and our humidity and our insects.
Mosquitoes.
Oh man, when I moved Romeo to Florida from Michigan, it took him several years to acclimate, and myself, to the swamp. But yes, I will say the winters are much nicer here in Florida, so we do love that.
Yeah, I don't miss those mosquitoes there. Okay, Angie, why care? You talked a lot about your own personal experience with horses, and I'm going to argue about how horses have shaped human history, but why are they still important? Like, why should, if I'm a wildlife enthusiast or an animal enthusiast, why should I care about horses? Because like we have cars now and motorcycles and all these things.
Yeah, well, I know one of the first things I did, I think I was probably in about third or fourth grade. I had joined 4-H. I wanted to learn more about horses. And in order to be 4-H, you had to do like some kind of project. And I didn't have a horse then, so I did a project about a horse. And I picked the evolution of the horse. And the horse lineage has one of the best fossil records of any mammal. And it demonstrates limb evolution, body shifts and changes, and massive dietary changes over 50 million years. So it's just a really, any science nerd you just have to love it. I mean, the quick synopsis, and Chris can go into detail more, but yeah, they start off like these little, like fox-like tiny creatures and evolved into the 1,000-pound on average horse that we have today, with a lot of changes to their limbs and adaptations to how they ate and how they hid from predators. But when we do look at the landscape too, from like an ecology point of view, a lot of these modern free-ranging or feral horses really impact plant communities and soil and other wildlife wherever they roam. They can boost plant animal diversity depending on what they graze and then what they basically poop out and then how they spread it around. So they can also compete with other herbivores in the area, which can alter different basically habitat and plant dynamics. So they're a really interesting case of what the areas look like with these large megafauna herbivores on them that used to be there. It's just incredible. And I have to give a big shout out to a couple of my friends that I ride horses with. Romeo's older, so I ride him, but it's a lot more like gentle riding and walking through the trails and looking at all the beautiful the eagle nest that's on our farm and stuff like that. So I don't ride him hard because he's an older guy, and I'm a middle-aged woman, so we take our time. But a friend got a horse, and I rode the horse down the farm. I call it Dibby's Magical Road, and I let him really open up, like gallop. And I probably hadn't galloped in, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. It just really just in sync with that horse and going fast and free. But shortly after, I galloped on this horse down this beautiful country road in Florida with the Spanish moss and the wind, and it was just literal magic. When I got back, I got to hold one of my dear friend's newborn babies, which is also magic. It's a little cowgirl. Oh my gosh, she's the cutest. And I was holding her, and all the hormones are happening, and I'm like, I love this so much. And then I joked because I was like, almost as much as running on a horse.
Yeah.
Like, I think, and maybe it's just a state I'm at in my life. I'm like, I think I prefer galloping on a horse to like holding a newborn baby. I don't know. They're all great. It's wonderful. They're some of my favorite things to do in life. They were back to back. Just doing like that sense of freedom and that sense of being in sync with a horse and just it's a very for me it's a very spiritual experience.
Well, you describe that beautifully, because I think that's what led to this relationship we have with the horse, humanity's relationship. When we talk about domestication, was it a young woman who was brave enough to get on the back of a horse the first time? Or I think of all those memes, why women live longer than men, and it's men doing stupid
Dumb
things.
stuff.
Was it a young man that said, "Oh, I'm going to show them," and jumped on the back of the horse and held on, and then the tribe at the time said, "Oh, there's something to this," and then they went down that domestication route? I don't know. We don't know, but we know that happened roughly 5,000 years ago. Once that did happen, it reshaped everything across the planet. Now, it took time. It didn't happen within, a year. Domestication, we know, that's why Angie and I always talk about the silver fox experiment. It takes about 50 generations. So for horses, that's roughly 400 years to get from the start of domestication to domesticated animals. 5,500 years ago is when that process started. I mean, it's funny you mentioned behavior, and the first thing, because Angie's my behavior expert, she taught me how to do behavior. And I remember we did a study using horses to look at zebra and wild ass. So we did the Somali wild ass, the Grevy's zebra, and the horse. And I still love that study. Still one of my favorite studies that you and I did together. And just to look at the differences in behavior between the three species. And there wasn't a lot. And so we were trying to correlate some of that. But to get back to their story, so once that happened, once they were domesticated, then distances changed. The world opened up, because imagine before that, we were early agriculture or hunter-gatherers still around, the North America, South America, indigenous peoples, in Europe and across Asia, maybe small communities. Farming was Early agriculture was happening. Mesopotamia, which is modern day Iran, Iraq, the cradle of civilization, they call it. There were emerging cities, but there wasn't big trade networks. So think about genetics. Our genetics today have been shaped because of the horse. I have done my DNA. I'm half Croatian, half British, essentially. That wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the horse. Those bloodlines would not have mixed and, moving across the world. So warfare completely changed, and trade was big, and empire building.
Well, agriculture, I mean, I think you already mentioned that, but just like
okay. So let me ask you, what's the counter argument to that? If you think about all the animals on the planet that have shaped human civilization, what are some of the counters to that? I said this somewhere, and somebody said, well, the mosquito, because the mosquito kills 500,000 people a year. I'm like, that didn't shape human civilization.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
The plague, it had an impact. I mean, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
The plague on the back, with fleas on the back of rats, across all the early trade routes, wiped out half of Europe and half of Asia, the populations. That definitely has impacted us, but hasn't shaped that civilization.
Right. And obviously people say dogs are the man's best friend, and that bond, and of course hunting with them and having them protect them, and all the jobs they were bred for, getting the rats out, just different things, collecting the ducks. But yeah, as far as shaping civilization, I think they shaped ourselves,
I love my
having that
dogs, and
bond, but yeah.
I think we have to do the domestic dog at some point now that we've opened this Pandora's box. We've done insects. Now we're starting to do domestic animals. I love my dogs. I could still argue they haven't. Yeah, they did offer some protection a little bit. They did help us hunt a little bit. It didn't change humanity. Maybe it made us better, which is a good thing. What about cattle, oxen?
Yeah, that I was gonna say some kind of domestic animal that we eat. I maybe even thought of like chicken, for like protein, an easy kind of quick source of protein, pretty easy to keep. Cattle, oxen also help plow fields and are a source of food and protein. But we didn't ride cattle into war. They probably pulled some carts and did some things like
Yeah, they
this.
did. Yeah, they did.
Hmm.
Yeah, they did.
So
There's history of cattle. I was just listening to a podcast. In the Byzantine Empire, the cattle were pulling the big siege engines or whatever, and they just killed the cattle, and the other army ran
yeah,
away.
yeah,
Like, cattle didn't really change warfare. It did
right,
change farming, so that's
definitely,
when we can start becoming.
yeah,
So it did have an impact,
yeah.
but not as much as the horse.
Hmm.
Donkey. Donkeys being domesticated around the same time in North Africa.
And they are definitely a pack animal. They are a workhorse of the Equid family.
Yeah. So it had an impact.
Hmm. Hmm.
Camel, we talked about this. That's
Yes.
probably the second behind the horse, I could argue. Elephants were tamed. They weren't domesticated, but they were easily frightened in warfare and whatnot. We're going to talk about in the second half of the podcast their physiology, as we always do, and what advantages their physiology gives, say, versus a cow or some of these other animals. But before horses, most of how we got around was walking, maybe some oxen pulling carts, boats going up and down rivers or along coasts. And, on average, we could probably cover 3 to 5 kilometers an hour. It just depends. But traveling long distances took many, many months, not days or weeks, but you're talking many, many, many months. So most of human civilization, you never went 50 kilometers past, or was that 25 miles outside of where you lived? Like you never
Right.
left,
Right.
where you lived.
Hmm.
So distance was a boundary. Very clustered civilization. Warfare was more localized. Most of the fighting was infantry based, so very slow and not very widespread. So I don't like talking about warfare, but the reason I do talk about it, especially with the horse, is no other animal has bled and died next to humans, but no other animal has bled and died next to us than the horse the last 4,000 or 5,000 years. Even in World War II, horses, the cavalry was there in the early days. Across Asia, they were still using horses quite a bit. Even in certain parts of the world, horses to get up in the mountains are still used.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And they do it, and the horse does it with, because we ask of it, and it does.
Yes.
And the cavalry, like I go back, this is why I love these animals so much. They're so selfless,
Yes.
and they would charge and die and bleed and get shot. And it
I
just,
mean,
and they didn't have a choice. I mean, it breaks my heart when you think about it.
yeah, and even
Yeah.
and now where I live in like modern day where they are given a lot more choices and we have a lot of fun together. I could tell story after story after story of horses being selfless,
Yeah.
protecting the people in their
Yeah.
herd.
Yeah. I mean, selfless service. That is the epitome of this animal. And they've crossed oceans with us. Well, let's get back to the domestication. So, Eurasian steppe, roughly 5,000 to 5,500 years ago, initially milk and meat animals. So they
Mhm.
were milking them, they were eating them, but then something shifted. So, like you said, somebody jumped on the back of one and held on tight. Then they
It's a
saw the
great feeling.
benefit. Yes, but they can tell by like bit wear on the teeth, and then the herd dynamic changes where it used to be like 50% male, 50% female. Then they're finding bones that are mostly female with a few males, and that's showing that that's kind of typical today of where you're breeding them and you're propagating them and starting to ride them. They're finding like in their skeletons along their vertebrae a little bit of wear where somebody would be riding. So that's how we can tell when they were first domesticated. But then it happened in Eurasia, so between Kazakhstan and Ukraine, in that area of Asia is where this happened. Then they started spreading over the hundreds of years. So they went into Europe, the Middle East, down into Africa, and into Asia. Horses went extinct in North America 10,000 years ago. They disappeared when the great megafauna die-off happened with the mammoth, saber-toothed cat. All of those animals died off. Horses in North America died off. They did not come back until the conquistadors in Mexico. They did come in the Caribbean first with like Columbus and those early 1492 then. But in 1535, when the conquistadors got to Mexico, some horses were either let loose or were captured by the indigenous peoples that stole them. And then that changed, especially in North America with the Plains Indians, and that changed their culture. But when this happened, distances collapsed. So no longer were you just had this 25-mile or 50-kilometer radius. You could now travel hundreds of kilometers or hundreds of miles away and start trading. So you started meeting other cultures, trading genetics, marrying sons and daughters off to different peoples around you. And the walls kind of collapsed around the planet. And then humans started to expand more rather than being localized. So how did horses help us get us to the moon? Well, if there was no horses, that wouldn't have happened as quickly as it would have, right? Maybe oxen, maybe camels, but humanity would have been slowed way, way down because distances would still be really, really far. There wouldn't be changes in warfare where like the cavalry, especially in early ancient times, if you do read history, those with the best cavalry, like just, even in recent medieval times, the Mongols, they changed the shape of the planet, like completely. So that was an important technology. But empires and empire buildings were done on the back of the horse. Horses crossed oceans. They came to New Zealand. They came to Australia. For good or bad, I'm just saying they opened that up. The militaries, that drove innovation. So part of the moon project was because of military industrial complex, but because horses accelerated our time frame, we were able to get to the moon in 1969. And if it wasn't for this animal, we probably would still be a few thousand years behind than we are now today. We'd probably be, more river going people.
Sure.
Maybe we've gotten cattle that could carry farther. I don't know. But again, if it wasn't for the horse, I guarantee you we wouldn't be in the moon. I wouldn't be on the computer talking to Angie today in the year 2026.
Yeah, if they decided to hop on the back of a zebra, which I'm sure some other
That's next. That's my
young
next topic,
person did that,
yes.
they obviously
Okay, why not zebras? That's my next
right
question.
off.
Why not zebras? You've worked with zebras. You've
I
been
have.
very intimate, up close, working with them.
Yes.
Why do you think zebras were not domesticated? Because that was my final point.
They just are more aggressive. And I don't know. The ones I worked with Bobby and Hogan and Macindy and Delry and Adia and Clayton. And the ones I worked with, of course, we did a lot of training with, but they just tend to be quicker to snap, a harder kick. And it's probably the predators maybe they evolved to run from. And we'll talk about horses as prey and or flight animals and all the really cool adaptations they have to get away from the saber-toothed tiger or whatever it is they evolved to run from. But yeah, so and then I don't really have any data to back this up, but I also heard that maybe their backbone wasn't as strong, but I don't know, or different, like the way their withers, and that's going to be their thoracic vertebra, like T1 through I think like 7, how that's shaped, that it was like a saddle fit better on a horse, but all that I don't know. I can just say that, the zebras I've hung out with had a lot more opinions than the horses. Now the
Well,
horses, of course, have been domesticated. They didn't,
yeah,
so
but you're spot on. You're spot on. You're
yeah,
spot on. Zebras evolving next to lions, hyenas, wild dogs, maybe leopards to an extent, extreme predator pressure. And so zebras are also in an environment where they get ambushed quite regularly. So they're hyper vigilant, hyper aggressive.
they're
And
flighty. I mean, horses are
yes,
flighty too, but yes, they are very, very
well,
sensitive.
horses had less ambush pressures, right? They're on the
Correct.
Great Plains of the Americas. They don't, yes, they had cheetahs, and because you had the American cheetah, uh, wolves and other predators, but they were able to, they have endurance.
Hmm.
They can run fast and go long distances. Zebras have to fight usually sometimes. So you see it sometimes in the nature videos, like Angie said, their kick is intense. It will kill you.
Yes.
Their bite is to injure, to survive. They're aggressive. They're hyper aggressive. And their herd structure is a lot different. So where in horses, there's the fall of the leader. There's some submissive behaviors. Zebras are their social bonds are a lot looser, a lot different. We learned some of this. You taught me some of this actually in the behavior stuff. So they're very dangerous to handle. So they didn't lend themselves to be domesticated. There have been tame zebras. You've seen it.
Of
I forgot
course.
Racing Stripes, the
Yes.
movie.
Yeah.
There's tame zebras, but not domesticated.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, even from like the zoo world, a lot of times if you go, you'll see what we call mixed species exhibits. So they'll have like the giraffe with maybe like a couple gazelles, and because they're in these big, big pastures and stuff. But yet, take note that a lot of times there's not zebras in there or certain species of zebras, because they will oftentimes not play well in mixed species exhibits, and they will hurt other animals. So, yeah, their legacy still continues today, which is why I personally am not a huge fan when I see zebras being somewhat treated like domestic horses. To me, it's recipe for disaster. And
So evolution, again, that could be a whole nother podcast. Angie did talk a little bit about horses. I mean, this is 55 million years ago. The Eohippus, this little tiny, 4 or 5-toed horse creeping around the forest. And then as the climate changed and, continents drifted, the forests receded to open plains. They either evolved and changed and became larger, and then those toes came to one hoof today to make them faster so they could outrun predators, or they went extinct. So it's a very rich history that we have a lot of bones to support in North America because there were so many scientists out there, scraping in the dirt. Just classification really quick. Parasidocula is the order. These are the odd-toed ungulates, much smaller again than the even-toed. So we have 17 species in odd-toed ungulates. One of Angie's favorites.
yes, as I say, we haven't
20.
we haven't covered all of them. Yeah.
No. Because it's the Equids. There's a lot of Equid species: the donkeys, the wild asses, the Przewalski horses, domestic horses. Then the rhinos. So you have all the rhino species, and then the tapir, which we have to do Malaysian tapir too. I have to put that on our list.
Yes,
Right?
definitely.
Did we do Malaysian tapir? We did a tapir, but I thought we did.
We did a Malaysian tapir. We haven't done
Okay.
any of them in South America.
Okay. The South America. Okay. So that's on the list. All right. My question is, why did odd-toed ungulates evolve compared to even-toed? Because there is such a big difference in physiology.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um, part of Angie's PhD dissertation work was using horses as a model for rhinos. And then we did some comparative studies with rhinos because, again, very evolutionary close. But then you have all of these even-toed ungulates, the camels, the antelope, the deer, all of them, the
Yeah.
moose,
I mean,
the
are,
cetaceans.
the cloven hoof ones, I would think
Mhm.
maybe evolved more for like a rocky terrain to go up in altitude, up in mountains, where, like you said, the horse evolved more on the plains. But that's really, I don't know. You got me.
No,
I,
no, it's good. No, you're right. You always talk form to function.
yes, yes.
The odd toed, so that's one with the horse, and then
Hmm.
three with the other species,
Hmm.
rhino. But for the horse, odd toe, that single hoof gave them more speed, more endurance. Now I know some of those even-toed antelope are fast
Super
and
fast.
agile,
Hmm.
right? They're more agile where they can turn
Hmm.
and twist
Yeah.
because, again, they're growing up, say, in Africa and parts of Asia,
Yeah.
around the world, but where they're being ambushed.
Hmm.
So they've got to turn quick and be super fast to survive. Where horses, they can see a pack of wolves coming. They go, oh, there you are. They turn and they're gone. And the wolves, good luck. You're not going to catch that herd of horses. So those are the evolutionary pressures ongoing, and then also where they live. Horses in grasslands, rhinos in
Hmm.
grasslands, right? They
Yeah.
evolved in North
Yeah.
America.
Hmm.
Lots of grass. They're grazers. Uh, these even-toed ungulates are more in foresty or bushy areas, so they're browsers, and so those are playing on evolutionary pressures. So the even-toed ungulates evolved where there was more brush, it's more dense, like Angie said, uneven terrain. That all had pressure on it, where the odd-toed, like the horses and rhinos, wide open areas,
Yeah.
open landscape, less of that. Now, Angie and I could dork out about this all day too. Digestive, we talk about this all the time. Digestive strategies. Horses have very small stomachs
Hmm.
and they have this huge hindgut that is like a rumen. That's where all the microbes break down all this fibrous grass and other things that they eat. Where in the even-toed ungulates like Cape buffalo or cows, that's the stomach. They have these
Yeah.
massive stomachs. And you see them chewing their cud and things
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm.
Well, what do Cape buffalo also have? This huge horse. We talked about
Horns.
this, right?
Well, yeah, and I just
Yeah.
always
So,
like to
yeah, yeah.
remind people that if an animal has a horn or an antler, it's because, well, they use them.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
They're used for
Defense. Yeah.
protection, they defense, they fight back. And of course, our horses don't have that. Their main defense, I mean, of course, they can kick and things like that, the zebras, but their
Yeah.
main defense is running.
Speed. Yeah. Yeah. So the odd toads, they have survived millions and millions of years, different strategies to survive, not just in North America, but across Asia
Sure,
and then
everywhere.
down into Africa with the zebra. And it's just a beautiful story. Like they're just such an incredible animal. Finishing off classification. So Equidae, the Equus, that's the zebras and horses, the Przewalski horses, the wild ass and donkeys. And then Equus ferus
Hmm.
was the pre-runner to Equus caballus, which is the domestic horse today. So, yeah, that's their evolutionary history. Again, that could be a whole separate podcast.
Yes.
Now,
Oh, yes, good.
yeah, yeah. Let's get into the physiology because this is, again, me and Angie's bread and butter. This is, we learned on horses and now we've expanded our
Yeah.
knowledge to
Well, and I
all the
know
animals
you're
on the planet. Yeah.
dying to get into the equine athlete, and as am I. I teach equine physiology, form to function, all of that. And I'm a wannabe athlete. I signed up for my first sprint triathlon, so we'll see how that goes in March. But the horse is hands down an incredible athlete. But I just want to touch on this whole one toe, two toe, three toe. We're just going to talk about the horse and their one toe. And I just want you for 1 minute, if you're listening, obviously, if you have if you're driving, keep two hands on the steering wheel. But if you're not driving, or you're watching this, just hold your hand out, or your foot if you're at work and you want to just pretend you're working or something. And keep in mind that the horse is doing this. Chris is going to talk about their speeds up to 55 miles per hour, I think, and he'll have all the stats. But that is all happening with them. Have your hands out, straighten them out. But look at your middle finger, and the nail on your middle finger is like their hoof. And what they are running on, for the most part, is equivalent to just your middle finger. I mean, they have 4 of them, of course, front and hind legs.
Yeah.
And so the evolution of their skeletal system to basically take the carpal joints, the metacarpals, and the phalanges, the digits, if you will, and fuse them into a solid bone, more or less. There's little subsidiary bones and things like this. But to have this, to be this one-toed ungulate, as Chris was talking about, and then to run like that from predators, or for me as a person that rides horses, to go over jumps or around barrels or go through water elements or tough terrain, climb up mountains. I've been on in Argentina riding a horse to the top of a mountain. They're doing that on either their middle fingers, or if you point your toes, your middle toe. It's incredible physiology.
Biology.
It's incredible.
Yeah, you just gotta love it. Yeah, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. And when we talk about speed, I mean, one of the fastest animals in the world, up to 55 miles per hour or 88 kilometers per hour, those short bursts. In a day, a fit horse could travel, 60 kilometers, close to 40 miles in a day. So again, talking about expanding the world, once we had these animals, we could go a lot further faster. That was per day. The messenger system, I love this one. The Pony Express, the United States, different empires. The Mongol Empire had a messenger system where they would race for 20 kilometers, hit a station, jump on a fresh horse, race another 20 kilometers, jump off, race another 20 kilometers, then tag their buddy with the message, and then their buddy would do the same thing. That was the Pony Express in the States that lasted for a few years.
Yeah.
They could do like 75, 80 miles in a day. That's over 150 kilometers in a day.
Yeah. It's incredible.
It changed the world because of their speed, their agility,
endurance.
But yeah, why? Why this animal? Why not the cow? So why are they so athletic? It's my big question today, telling this story on why the horse became our greatest technology next to fire. I think fire's probably the most important. But I mean, seriously, think about the second. What's the second most important thing that's happened to humanity that changed civilization?
It's incredible.
Fire, because we could cook our food.
Mm-hmm.
And gave us safety and warmth and comfort. I mean, maybe agriculture, but horses are part of that, where we started planting things in the ground. That's a big jump.
Mm-hmm.
It's still the horse. I mean, the horse top 5 easily. And camels couldn't do what they do. I mean, they do part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Oxen can't do it. Donkeys are too small. Zebras won't. So yeah, it's the horse.
They won't.
Yeah.
They can't. They won't.
And why? So why? Because they're so athletic. That's why. They have a huge, strong skeleton. Like Angie said, that middle digit is pretty strong. It's not. If I would try to walk on my middle fingers, they'd break because I'm so big. But the horse's hooves and their bone structure gave them a longer stride length, so they could move faster and go over more terrain. Like their skeleton's like almost like it's spring loaded, so like they can move over more ground quicker with less energy spent.
Mhm.
If that makes sense.
It
So
does,
they were
yeah.
built for movement. Their tendons, biological springs, right? So Angie and I, you probably name tons of tendons in the horse skeleton, mammal skeleton. But a lot of those tendons work hand in hand, and so they build up energy, they store the energy. So it makes their speed and endurance less fatiguing. Where like Angie's getting ready to do a triathlon, her body's built for it. If I tried to do it, I would die. I'm the ox,
I'm
she's the
tired
horse.
thinking about it. No, it should be. It's very, very short distances, but
Yeah,
it'll. But
still,
putting them all together, I think that's the test that I want.
yeah. But yeah. So the horse versus say oxen or camels or some of these other animals can't do that. Huge heart, Angie. So I know you
It's
teach all
true.
about that, not just, metaphorically, but physically. Their heart is up to 5 kilograms. So what is that? 10 pounds, 12 pounds
It's usually about
in
10% of their
there.
body weight on average.
Yeah. Yeah. So their cardiac output, I don't know if we were doing research. I know we did with the exercise stress stuff I was working on, but their heart rates can get up to like 240 beats per minute.
Yes, sustained. Hmm.
Yeah, sustained. Our hearts, human hearts would explode. We can't do that. Horses can. So their cardiac output is like 10 times ours in exercise. So they're pumping more blood throughout their body quicker, which means more energy to the cells, more oxygen to the muscles, so they can maintain that speed and endurance. Okay. Cows can't do this. They've got big hearts. Cows do, but they can't do what a horse does. Then their lungs, right? So we talk about their lungs. They have high aerobic and anaerobic capacity, huge lungs. They're obligate nasal breathers. So they can only breathe through their nose. They can't breathe through their mouth.
Which is
But
as a runner
yeah,
is just crazy to me. I'm like I always put myself in a horse's hooves and just be like, wow. I mean, yeah, they're doing all of that through just their nose and filling up those lungs with just a lot of air. So it's really incredible.
yeah, just getting that oxygen, get rid of the carbon dioxide, and their massive lungs. Then their muscles. This has always fascinated me, Angie, because the type 1 muscle, that's what you're made of, right? Like your endurance, you've ran since I've known you.
Yes.
You used to go do stadium steps all the time. I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't keep up with you.
Yes, I'm definitely a cardio
Yeah,
junkie for sure.
yes. No, I mean, in my older age and in the military, I ran a lot, but definitely I had more type 2 muscle. I was a sprinter, explosive, because I played American football in high school and college. So I'd sprint. So my leg muscles were more type 2 fibers. Then when I went in the military and started doing 5-mile runs, I was dying.
Yeah, I bet.
Dying. I was dying. It's like just so but horses, just a really balanced mix of those muscle
Hmm.
fibers that are very efficient.
Hmm.
So they have explosive speed, but then they have muscles that will help them maintain that endurance. Very quick reflexes. I mean, just
Well,
so many.
really large muscle
Yeah,
masses relative to body weight,
yeah.
especially in certain
So that way they
areas.
could carry us. Yeah.
Yeah. And then their glutes and hammies are super strong. And yeah. So it's, they definitely have high absolute power output for acceleration and speed. And really, I mean, much more so than any other mammal of similar size. So if you think of like, yeah, a zebra or a cow or something. So yes,
Yeah. I
they're,
mean, when you watch, bison, I don't know how far bison can run, but like Cape Buffalo, like I do watch videos of
mhm.
Cape Buffalo when they run from predators. I mean, they're not going as fast as zebras or horses, not even close, but they tend to tire out and then they'll bunch up right?
Sure.
And put their
Hmm.
bosses out, the boss of their horns out, facing outward towards the predators. And that's a defense mechanism. Muskox do the same thing.
Hmm.
Deer or other even-toed ungulates, they'll either tire and like wolves will run them down.
Sure. I mean, yeah, the endurance, and of course, it depends on the breed of horse and training and all these things, which we dissect in one of my classes. But in general, just the horse itself just has, like I said, a large muscle mass, but it also has high mitochondrial volume, robust oxidative enzymes, cleaning everything up in there from exercise. Because they have these huge muscle masses in the glutes and the hammies and all that kind of stuff, they can store a lot of intermuscular glycogen, which helps them keep going as they're traveling for a long period of time. And yes, of course, they have aerobic and anaerobic ability, and they can switch kind of back and forth, but they have a huge capacity for looking more at like an endurance type thing of covering the 60 miles a day, or some of the statistics Chris was talking about. They have a really exceptional aerobic capacity as well, plus these super powerful muscles. And then anybody who's ever exercised, that whether you're going for a run or you're lifting weights, that next day when you're sore. So that's a lot of that is going to be leftover lactic acid and other things from the buffering system of the muscles functioning and firing and working, some unwanted byproducts there. And horses have a really strong transportation and buffering systems to basically delay the fatigue and allow daily high intensity efforts if they're in training and competition to kind of basically just buffer out this lactic acid. But when we think of our extreme athletes, and humans are also, we could do a whole podcast arguing humans are really good athletes as well, especially now all the training and knowledge that we have. And there's all these cool studies of like what fuels us better and what doesn't, and how to build muscle or how to improve cardiac output, all this kind of stuff. But something that really puts both humans and horses together from an athletic physiology of being an extreme athlete is the capacity to sweat, right? So the horse sweat is a little bit different than human sweat. And it's interesting because most all mammals have sweat glands of some kind, but very few use sweating as a major cooling strategy. So us humans do it to help us cool, and so do horses. And really, the only other any other animal that really uses it, Chris? This is your quiz time.
Well, no, I mean, I remember just the one thing. Whenever I think of sweat, I think of the moose, and they can't sweat, and so it's hot, they die. Dogs sweat through their paws and pant. I know there's got to be other species that sweat. There has to be.
And this is for extensive body cooling, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
some old world primates, I'd have to look up which ones.
Yes.
And I guess some bovids, but they're not also running, and they're not as athletic, so they're not necessarily generating as much body muscle heat as a horse or a human does. So no, it's like us and them really, which is amazing and cool.
That's crazy, yeah.
And what's really fascinating about horse sweat is it is chock full of electrolytes. So it's considered hypertonic compared to their blood, which means there's actually more electrolytes like sodium, chlorine, in their actual sweat than in their blood. So it's really salty. And scientists are super fascinated by horse sweat because there's actually a protein in it called latherin, and it makes it kind of soapy. So if you've ever seen a horse on a hot day sweating, sometimes it almost will look like foam on their neck or in between their like bum cheeks. And that is this latherin protein, which is part of this hypertonic sweat that comes out. And it just kind of stumps a chump scientist of like, why do they have this and how does it help? And how could we maybe use it to help us? So it's pretty interesting.
I remember one species, blood sweat.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember which species that was?
That's the hippo, right?
Yeah. But it's not true sweat.
It's not real
It's more like
sweat. No, it's like
sunscreen and stuff.
gooey stuff to keep them cool. But it is a mechanism for cooling. But yeah, it's not a true sweating system to cool down. So, another thing that we share with them, with our horses, pretty unique.
One of the fascinating things that horses have taught us, because we learned so much. Again, going back into, over the years, people that listen to this podcast, Angie and I talk about what we learn from our domestic animals that we can apply to our exotics or endangered species. The physiology is not just behavior, because behavior is different from species to species, but how these animals view the world, right? That's one of the things I think horses can teach us a lot, because we do study them so intently, is how other species see their environment, their
Hmm.
senses.
Hmm.
So what do we know? Because you and I, again, we could do this for another hour, but Cliff Notes versions. How do horses see the world?
Sure. I mean, very visually. Horses arguably have a really awesome sense of vision. It might be their super sense, if you will. Horses, being prey animals, have huge, not the biggest based on size in the animal kingdom. That's going to be like probably the colossal squid or something, but they do have like huge laterally placed eyes that give them almost panoramic views with only small blind spots directly in front of them and directly behind them. So this is like binocular vision, as they can see, either side of them. And it really helps them, of course, detect predators. And another little fascinating, fun nugget fact that I love is in the horse's retina, they have, I don't know if it's retina, is it? Yeah. Yes. Horses have what's known as a visual streak in their retina. And this is like a slit like pupil that basically helps them scan the horizon while their head is down grazing, right? Because in general, we'll talk about behavior, but horses in a free choice situation out on the plains of North America would probably eat grass like up to 16 hours a day. So heads down, but they have this really cool visual streak that lets them monitor predators with minimal head movements while they're eating the grass that they need to do. So it's a very cool adaptation, and it helps them see predators from all different angles. But of course, they can hear their predators coming. Horses have a broader, higher frequency range than us humans, which allows them to detect higher pitched, more distant sounds. And kind of like a micro sonar, each horse ear can rotate independently about 180 degrees. So that can help them basically figure out and localize where a sound is coming from without moving their whole head while they're eating grass. So very efficient. You got to love that. And another fun one that a lot of people that don't quite associate with horses, to me, I voted it their super sense of the year, but is their smell. So Chris and I talk a lot about it when we would cover wolves or the polar bear, about these like animals that just have an incredible sense of smell. But in horses, their olfactory bulb is very well developed, and their nasal cat and the nasal cavity carries tons of olfactory sensors, and they can detect social cues, whether it's a pheromone from another horse, environmental cues, food. They can be very picky about food and toxins if they're eating a lot of plants. It's helped them survive, evolutionary speakingly, for a really long time. And then they do this fun behavior too to help them smell, especially when they're dealing with another horse's pheromones. They'll do a fun Flehmen response where they basically curl their upper lip. Cats do it too, to some degree, but
Mhm.
they basically curl their upper lip, and they have this region called the vermanonasal organ that basically allows horses to sample test volatile chemicals or molecules, whether it's in urine or other secretions. Romeo will do it when I feed him a Nutri-Grain apple bar on cue every time. He's such a ham.
Yeah, yep.
But they use it, of course, for really important social cues, especially when they're looking for different reproductive signalings and what horse is this and who is this. If um, we think about our like bloodhounds, that dog has about 1 billion olfactory receptor neurons, or the average dog has about 300 million. Us humans have a horrible sense of smell. It's about 5 million. And horses, on average, are about 25 to 30 million olfactory receptors. So a really good sense of smell that I think that a lot of people don't quite realize. Otherwise, I think it's important to note, too, that horses have uh, their touch sense, their skin sensitivity is really good around their body, their muzzles, their lips. They have whiskers, also known as vibracia, that can help sense plants around them when they're grazing. And yeah, their neck region and their lower limbs can be very sensitive as if they're moving through plant material and just giving a lot of information to their surroundings. And of course, also helping them fight off parasites like flies and bugs and other annoying things like that. And one of my favorite other little nugget fun fact is horses have this muscle called the panniculus carnosa muscle, and it's this thin subcutaneous sheet that lies just under the skin, crosses the horse's shoulder, flank, and hindquarters. And it's basically a reflex muscle that's triggered by sensory nerves in that skin area and hair follicles. So when a fly lands on that part of the body, they don't need conscious control to like, okay, I'm going to move that muscle to get that fly off, which is what us humans do. We have to like smack the fly or whatever. They just basically, that part of their skin shakes and like a knee-jerk reaction. It's usually enough to get the fly off of them. So that's kind of a fun little evolutionary trick that they do. And Chris is going to dive into probably a very quick talk about nutrition, because him and I could probably talk all day and all night about it. It's a lot of ongoing research. But horses do have good taste, and they distinguish between sweet and salty, and they do have aversions. So, which of course helps them in the wild not eat toxic plants. So, yeah, they are very sensitive to taste, and they have preferences. There's equine nutritionists that will actually do taste test studies to figure out what's more palatable. Chris could probably talk for that. But yes, it is important to him, and that's why Romeo loves his apple Nutrigrain bars.
Yeah. 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 They like sweet stuff. Well, in the wild, they grasses predominantly. You think of the plains of North America where they evolved, and the plains of Asia, the savannas of Africa, Equids, primarily grasses, different types of grasses, but they are flexible. So they would browse sometimes on different brush and bushes and herbs and fobs. So really variety of diet. And what excites me about where we are today is we're going back to nature with a lot of our domestic horses, feeding them diets that they were intended to eat, not sitting in a stall. Here's some grain and here's a piece of hay. We want to get back to what they were eating naturally. Sorry. Now, they're meant to eat all day. This is what Angie and I did our behavioral studies when we were looking at the zebras and Somali wild ass. And the horses, we found they graze about 60% of the day. And a lot of times they're either moving while they graze. They rest very intermittently. Most herbivores don't take long naps. They sleep very short bouts. Then they'll keep eating. So horses are meant to eat 24/7.
Yes.
And keep moving. And, that's why wild horses have such huge ranges, because they're constantly moving to different food sources and
Yeah,
things
and
like
they've got that
So,
tiny little stomach. It doesn't hold much. I mean, 2 to 4 gallons in your average like 1,000-pound horse. But that way, when they need to run, they can run fast. They're not bogged down by a huge rumen like a cow, which I've done enough necropsies with different bovid species during my time at the zoo, and then of course in animal science. And the rumen, it's big, it's massive, and it holds a lot, and that's not what we see in our horses at all.
yeah, like cattle, and we talked about in Cape Buffalo, I think is, they'll sit and ruminate and chew their cud, and they're, in a herd with big horns, and that's their safety, where horses, zebras, and other equids are constantly moving, constantly nibbling throughout the day.
Yeah.
Because they're avoiding, big cats, think about them in Asia, tigers. You have wolves, bears sometimes might try to catch a horse. back in the day, even today. Domestic horses are the wild ones.
Yeah.
But that's it as far as predators. I mean, that's what they had to watch out for.
Yeah.
All right. So you're my behavior expert. You're the one that introduced me to this 15 years ago, 16
Mm-hmm.
years ago when you first showed up at my office,
Mm-hmm.
teaching me how to conduct behavior. And then we got research grants to study behavior at John Zoo with our students. I mean, besides all the stories you've told so far, but what is so unique about horses and their behavior?
Yeah. I mean, I just love watching them. So I don't know if there's a ton of unique things about their behavior. Probably for me, it's the social dynamic. Uh, that we just in general researchers people just thought that there was this linear, this one's alpha and this one's beta, and it was a line, and this is how it always was, like this the stallion does this, and then the mare, and all these, and then the submissives like follow the group. And the more we're able to utilize new technologies and put more research hours into it and look at a lot of these feral populations. And then, of course, even our own domestic horses that have friends and feelings and emotions, is it's actually quite complex. And it makes sense that it is more complex. And I think we were giving it historically for 50, 100 years ago, giving credit to it, that it's not just this linear, like this is a dominant one and that's it. Yes, they do have very stable hierarchies that have dominance in them, where they maintain their relationships by using super subtle cues, some not subtle cues, but they're always working on these dynamics. And I think from a behavioral point of view, that we can learn so much from them, because even with our own relationships, whether it's your family, your friends, your coworkers, your colleagues, your students, that you're always having to maintain these relationships dynamics, and it can change sometimes, and then how you respond. And the horses just do these micro shifts in their communication that say everything without really saying nothing, and then the other horse can pick up on it. And really in the wild, there's no huge fights even between like two different stallions from different harems and herds and stuff. They'll fight a little bit, but like not fight to the death, because there's just so much behavioral cueing, from the ears to the eyes to the face to the teeth to the neck to the head position to the body position to the leg position to the tail position, just talking to each other in this visual display of, once again, some very obvious signs that I'm mad at you, like probably similar to our human smile, like I'm happy, I'm mad, but also on a micro scale too, that us humans really are just starting to learn. So depending on what you look at, the most recent data suggests that horses have, now I'm just talking about their face, so just think of a friend or a colleague in their face or whatever, or a partner. Horses have over 17 facial expressions and movements that they can combine into, once again, very obvious signs of like ears laid back, teeth glared, to literally like showing a little bit more of their eye. So they have macro expressions, and we're learning a lot about what we call these micro expressions. There was a study that came out not too long ago that documented that horses have more facial expressions than chimpanzees. So, which chimpanzees, Chris and I have covered them on the podcast, they're our closest relative. They're very expressive as well, and have a lot of communication signals that they use visually, is of course vocally as well. But yeah, it's a fun time to be alive and like learning about horse behavior and studying communication, because they're just super sophisticated social and emotional creatures. And this is what shapes their life, to live in this herd dynamic and to not be picked off by predators. So I don't know. I mean, there's just so many behaviors. I can't list them all. Take my equine behavior class online sometime. It's too big a
Goes,
topic. And you know,
yeah,
like I said, I've been doing this 40 years. Today in Florida, I know everybody's rolling their eyes. It was a little cold this morning. It was a little breezy, and I'm working with the 4 horses where Romeo lives, and they're just like totally different behaviors because of the weather and the different dynamic, and somebody came in before somebody else, so is that one moving up the totem pole? But no, I
hmm
think it was just
hmm
mad because it's in its estrus cycle. I mean, there's just like all of these really complex behaviors, and I just love watching them and learning from them, and it never gets old, and they're beautiful, and their body postures, and of course they do communicate vocally, right? They have the neigh, the whinny, the grunt, the blow, the snort, the nicker, the all that
yeah,
stuff. So it's just incredible as far as how they work together socially. And I don't know, in the state that we live in now, I feel like horses have a lot to teach us about how to work well within groups, and how to, if you are in charge, maybe you do it graciously, and work well with others still, and you can still be a leader without being, beating everybody up basically. So they do it really well, and it's just fun to keep learning about. All these studies are coming out. There's just a lot of studies coming out that just show that horses are just intelligent. They're very optimized to predict other behavior, which if
hmm
I could learn to do that, right? Like, oh, is my preteen going to be mad at me today because I I only filled his
Jeez.
water bottle up halfway? You know what I mean?
I
Like,
wish I could answer
or
that question. Yeah,
I know, right? So, but studies are
yeah,
showing that they're really optimized for predicting others. They can navigate these social and physical environments that are tough. They learn really well from consequences. That would help us humans out. And yeah, they're good at problem solving. They have a great memory. And of course, they're once again very, very social, and they can really read humans. And that's the other super fascinating thing is I think as a, if humans, if we could read each other a little bit better in some of our behaviors, I think that would maybe help a lot of our interpersonal relationships. But research just demonstrates time and time again that horses can basically use human cues and basically tune into a task. Oh, that doesn't. And that horses just have this social awareness where they can read the body posture of the human, the facial expression, the tone of our voice. So not only other horses do they do that with, but humans. And this is part of this horse human bond that's super fascinating. I'm hopefully going to a conference uh, in Orlando in February about just all this really incredible data that they're finding about the relationship and the emotional state, the affective state of the human and of the horse. And it's just really a quick study that I just always talk to my equine welfare students about is it was in 2009, Keeling and colleagues, and basically what they did is they tested horse heart rates and human heart rates while humans were riding, and they had all these participants ride horses, and they had to go around a circle and like a big arena 4 times. And they told the riders that on the fourth time at this certain spot, they were going to surprisingly open up a big umbrella right in front of the horse. And anybody who knows horse behavior, or really for anybody, that would be somewhat shocking. Like, it's supposed to shock the animal, and a horse that's scared will typically bolt or buck or do some not fun behavior if you're on top of them. What the study showed, first of all, they were lying. They never opened the umbrella, though. So they didn't want these riders to
yeah,
get hurt, or the horses. So they
yeah.
never opened the umbrella. And there was this really interesting data from the horse and the human heart rates. Remember, the human's riding the horse, and the horse is and the
Mm.
horse is just walking. So it's like their heart rate shouldn't go up hardly at all. And human and horse ride for lap 1 is like pretty average. Horses moving, riders riding, not high at all. Second lap maybe goes up a little bit, for the horse because they're working a little bit, but they're walking. Anyways, by the time they get to the third lap and then into the fourth lap, both the human and the horse's heart rate skyrocket.
Anticipation. Yep.
Well, the human, of course, my heart rate would
Yeah.
skyrocket. I'm like, oh shit. I'd be like, oh shoot, I'm about to get thrown off. But the horse is just walking in a very consistent way. Why
Yeah.
does
Yeah.
their heart rate jump up? And so this is really this ability for horses to detect subtle human stress, whether it's posture or breathing or something physiologically, a smell. Researchers don't know what this mirroring behavior is, but horses got it and they do it and they do it well. So once again, it's just another reason to love and appreciate the horse. I honestly, if we just could just be more, if we could learn from horses and be more like horses, I mean, they really just seem to help us in every way, shape, and form. And so, yeah, it's just incredible.
Yep. Well, I know we're running long, but let's do the Cliff Notes version on reproduction, because again, that's a whole nother. We taught whole semesters on
I'm teaching a whole
reproduction in
semester
animals,
in it, but
especially
I
horses. Yeah.
can do it in 30 seconds. That's a challenge. Uh, so, no, but horses in general, they are polyestrous seasonal breeders, which means they have a season where the females have a season where they have their estrus cycle and have high estrogen during that, where they ovulate and can get pregnant. And stallions similarly have a breeding season as well, where they have high testosterone and a lot more interest in the females. And so, of course, in North America, where I live, that will be in like the spring and the summer when we have long days. So horses are long day breeders in North America. They want to breed when it's what we're all dreaming of, summertime. And so during that time, the female horse, the mare, she will cycle every 21 days once her cycle really gets going. And that in Florida, that might be in February, March, April, it just depends. And then she will keep cycling every 21 days until she is pregnant. Sorry. And now when a female horse does get pregnant, the gestation period is about 11 to 11 and a half months. So almost a year, a long time, longer than us humans. So bless their hearts. But the goal is if they are bred in the spring, then they produce that singleton foal. Twins are very, very rare in horses because 1,000-pound mare is going to give birth to 100-pound foal on average. So it's a big deal. Pardon the pun. It's a big foal, a lot to take care of, a lot of energy to produce the milk during lactation and all of that. So, but that should happen basically every spring, once a year, in theory. So, and depending on where horses live near the equator, their breeding season may last longer because there's not such a shift in the long days and the short days like there are in North America. So yeah, they're a really fascinating model to study. And as humans that, of course, breed horses, either for money or riding or work or whatever, their pleasure, whatever it is, humans have learned a lot of ways to manipulate the hormones of mostly female horses to learn more about their cycle, to either make them come and maybe come into their season sooner, or to speed up their cycle, to help keep them pregnant. Lots of different hormonal ways to manage them. And Chris and I have a lot of interest in that and what we can learn using the horse as a model to help some of our exotic ungulates that have a somewhat of a similar physiology when it comes to hormones and all of that. And so the horse has really, really helped us from a fertility point of view, from assisted reproductive technologies, of course, amongst their own selves, but then in wild and exotic species of similar physiology.
the Przewalski's horses are only around because we knew how to breed horses.
Correct.
They were down to 12, and now they're over 2,000, and they're roaming again. They're releasing them in Europe now,
Yeah.
In the wild, and China and Mongolia.
So, another reason why a horse is his man best friend, I mean, because we're able to learn from them and manage them so well, reproductively speaking, and learn so much about them. Now that information is being used in other species from a conservation point of view to help save them. It's just, I mean, you just got all aspects of them, from, the tip of their nose to their poll and forelock to their tail to their reproductive organs to their behavior. I mean, it's incredible. And then, of course, they, as far as mothers and fathers goes, a stallion will breed as many mares as he can, of course, depending on if it's a domestic setting or a wild setting. But in the wild, the foal will grow and stay with the dam typically for a year. If it's a wild setting, female, if it's a female filly, she'll typically stay in the harem. But if it's a stallion, he'll hang out with mom for about a year, and then when the next foal is thrown, a lot of times he gets kicked out and has to go join a bachelor band until he can find his own females. So yeah, and then how long can horses live, you wonder? A long time.
I remember that episode.
Yeah.
I think it was, I don't know, maybe we did Przewalski horse or Smalley Wild Ass. You're like, how old's my mare going to get? Because the oldest horse was
Rosie
like
was
60
still
or
alive
something.
then. Yes. And honestly, when she was 36, I made the very hard and well thought out but difficult choice to humanely euthanize because of arthritis in her carpal, which is like her wrist, or some people call it their knee joint, and her front legs. But other than that, she would have kept going. So, Romeo, I put her down on a good day, but it was very hard. I'll cry if I talk about it too much. But I have Romeo, and he's 27 and going strong. And I can't remember the exact statistic, but I think there's definitely horses that have lived into their 50s. But on average, I believe it's late 20s.
Yeah, it's as vet care gets better, nutrition gets better. Horses now are reaching into their 30s. Some into their 40s, but generally late 20s is a good life for a horse. But yeah, I mean, you really, when you really think about what they've done for us, your own families, your own lineages, wherever you are in the world listening to this, horses have impacted you. Some in good ways, others in bad ways, like I said, with warfare, but it's not the horse's fault, with the Mongol invasion and expansion, the plains peoples, whatever. But still, I look at it from the horse's perspective. They didn't ask to be there, but they did it, and then they died and suffered, and they crossed oceans. Like, how hard that is for an animal that's meant to graze all day and move. And now they're the number one livestock species moved around the world via airplanes. They're all flying now.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands of horses are on the move around the world via airplanes to compete or breed and stuff. So these are special animals to humans. I mean, these
very
are
much so. Anybody who knows a crazy horse
yeah.
person,
there's a reason.
There's a reason. And I say that with the most love because I am one of them. So I see you, I feel you. I wish I had as much money to fly my horse around the world. But yes, I mean, it's the horse human bond. We're still learning about it, but it has been going on for thousands of years, and it's super special. And for all of our wildlife enthusiasts out there, is because we have learned a lot about their reproductive health and things like that. They're helping wildlife. So they just are incredible, and and they're helping kids, and I mean, they help Chris and I meet. So there you go, right? Like, I mean, they're just very, very special.
Yeah,
so.
They are. They're wonderful animals. You can always learn more about them. I have a book I wrote. It's a textbook many years ago. Angie's still teaching. That's our day jobs. We're still very much involved with horses around the world. They are that special. And if you disagree, please email us and tell me which animal you think has impacted human history more. I already said mosquito. I know they sadly do because of malaria and disease,
Yeah.
but that didn't shape human history. Plague on the back of rats, I mean, it was fleas carrying the bacteria that was on the back of rats. Maybe, but yeah, no. They didn't change the trajectory of human history. They just put
I'm
us
not
through
going
a
to
lot
even
of
argue
misery.
with you because I've been hearing this for the
No,
last like 10 years.
no,
I
I
agree.
just don't. I mean,
No, I don't.
I just don't. I just really, again, we wouldn't have gone to the moon. I wouldn't be talking to Angie thousands of miles away,
I wouldn't have had a
live,
smile on
recording
my
this
face.
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have had a smile on my face this morning if I didn't get to hug Romeo and feed him his Nutri-Grain bar and watch their behaviors that were like unexpected but really cool to watch this morning. So yeah, and just I
Yeah,
mean
and
all of
120
it.
years ago, that was your car, the way you got around. That was so important to your family. So again, yeah, this was a long one. We knew it would be, but the year of the horse. Let's
I mean,
celebrate them.
yes,
And yeah,
definitely. Year of the horse.
yeah.
I have to wear red. That's what one of my friends told me today about when it's your year. So since I am a horse, I'll have to be wearing more red to celebrate them. And yes, I just will continue to celebrate them every day because they are just have made such an impact on my life personally, and they have definitely made me be a better person, a better researcher, a better friend, a better animal advocate. They have taught me a ton about welfare. They have made me change my mind about things. I mean, literally made me a better person, let alone more confident and all those types of other things. But yes, I just this episode goes out to all of the horses that I've been blessed to be around in Michigan with Marianne, to Florida at the University of Florida, to all of the horses there, and then now to Miss Dibby, my late great best horse friend, who I just passed away a couple months ago, and I still miss her today. So
Take care.
thank you.